Hello, my name is Sean Rhiney, and I'm the director of the Eigel Center for Community Engaged Learning at Xavier University. And I'm here with my colleague, Professor Diane Ceo-Difrancesco, as part of our poster presentation for the AJCU Commitment to Justice in Jesuit Higher Education. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Sean. Glad to be here today.
We'd also like to acknowledge our collaborators on this proposal, Anne Green and Anne-Marie Keffer from St. Joseph's College, who contributed and informed this presentation. We'd like to talk a little bit about race and service learning, addressing uncomfortable truths, particularly an examination of critical service learning. And we'll provide, as part of our poster presentation, a quick overview, some challenges that we've acknowledged with both students and faculty, solutions related to the integration of community voices, and the power of assessment, and some final recommendations. First, service learning. Service learning is a form of experiential education in which students engage in activities that address human and community needs together with structured opportunities that are intentionally designed to promote student learning and development. Service learning is also one of the high impact learning practices popular throughout the country, but certainly within our Jesuit institutions, that allows students to apply what they're learning in real world settings and reflect in a classroom setting on their service experiences as well. There is a distinction between traditional and critical service learning. Traditional service learning might be more project-based, more direct service-based than person-centered or relationship-built, like critical service learning. There are also some issues that come with traditional service learning, such as placing students in this position of fixing or helping the communities that they are engaging. And in fact, it might even, as we've noted in our student challenges, enforce ideas of us versus them, or stereotypes that the students might have brought with them as part of their experience. It can often reinforce these issues instead of deconstructing them, which critical service learning does do as well. Some of the challenges that students face related to related to service learning are that our students often come from predominantly white institutions with little economic or racial diversity. And it is often these same students that we send out into communities of color as part of their service experience. And the literature in support of service learning often shows that this can reinforce those stereotypes and prejudices, as I noted. There's also this challenge that middle-class students from diverse economic situations might not always feel comfortable talking about race. In general, these students often see racism as a problem that belongs to different socioeconomic classes. And then there is this aspect of white fragility, this notion that whites themselves often don't investigate the causes of racism or acknowledge them when they're in settings that service learning provides as well. And this often allows for a very simplistic view of racism and not the structural systemic view that we know exists as well. And we want to suggest that this poster presentation is very much in synergistic with the apostolic preferences, and particularly this notion of a hope-filled future, one that's free of discrimination and free of racial injustice. And it's why we took this examination upon us as well. And now I'm going to turn it over to Diane to discuss some of the challenges that our faculty might face in this setting.
Thanks, Sean. Well, despite an increased focus on diversity on our campuses, many faculty members teach from a white cultural perspective. Race is challenging to talk about and challenging to teach. Faculty can be reticent to talk about race in the classroom for fear of making missteps or appearing offensive, so they avoid the obvious, the elephant in the room per se, related to the community engaged experience. But by doing so, however, they reinforce among their students the white silence that has become dominant in many classrooms. Also, without training, faculty are ill-equipped to facilitate discussions in the classroom, and as Courtney Hernandez states, they lack training in critical race theory and critical service learning pedagogy, leading some faculty to an understanding of racism as personal rather than as systemic or cultural. A professor and our colleague Anne Green at St. Joseph's Universities published regarding this very topic, and she points out that service learning is implemented mostly by white faculty with white students at predominantly white institutions to serve mostly poor individuals and people of color. So Anne suggests that we invite faculty to reflect on race and racism by modeling practices that enable them to unpack privilege, learn about structural racism, and engage with the Jesuit mission of social justice.
One of the ways that we found that art can be supportive of faculty and supportive of student preparation as they engage in service learning in communities is this notion of integrating community voices. And I'm sure much like your institutions as well, part of our mission that focuses on solidarity instructs us to learn from our companions. So when we're out in community, when we're engaging, we're actually there learning as well. And so one of the things that we thought might be a possible antidote to some of these challenges that we've discussed is this integration of community voices as part of a Canvas module. Canvas is our online platform that we utilize in support of all classes, both online and in-person classes. It's content driven. And so one of the things that we have piloted is this Engaging Community Voices Canvas module that connects with community voices as part of a student's preparation. This module is designed to be utilized with all classes of all stripes, not just those that address racial and/or systemic injustice. But it does support preparing students for examining those issues once they're out in community. And so it engages students historically and contemporarily with issues that happen and certainly reflect upon their immersive experiences. We'll show you one example of a community voice. This is Raquel Smith, who is an attorney with the Center for Social Justice here in Cincinnati, Ohio, as part of the Urban League of Southwestern Ohio.
Growing up in the city, or just growing up in America as a Black woman in a Black family, we were always taught how to survive an encounter with a police officer. But here, particularly in this region, there were areas that we were specifically told that we were not welcome and that we were not to, especially when I started driving, to drive through. And actually one of those areas is very close to here, which was Norwood. Just a quick story, you know, we had the benefit of meeting with some folks in the Norwood Police Department. And as we were preparing for it, I was letting my team know, which some of them are not from Cincinnati, historically, what that area has been for Black people, which is pretty much not welcoming. When we met with leadership there, one of the first things they said is, we know historically we have not been a friendly city to people of color, specifically Black people. So like their leadership acknowledged it and actually acknowledged that they were once a sundown town. And this is a municipality that's right dap smack in the middle of the city.
As you can see from Raquel's lived experience, she shares her own viewpoint here as someone who's a professional working on issues of voter disenfranchisement and community policing, but shares her own lived experience. The video would be designed to be supportive of a classroom conversation, a preparation for students who might be going into the communities that she's talking about to better understand some of the racial history, the racial injustice pieces that inform her own viewpoints as well. Now I'll turn it back over to Diane to discuss assessment.
Yes, thanks, Sean. We have found that a multifaceted approach to assessment is most effective, and we want to track not only the student learning, but also how well we are doing in our pedagogical models and our approaches. So we're involving quantitative and qualitative data in our multifaceted approach, as well as data collection which takes place before, during, and following the community engaged learning experience. For instance, in our case, we administered a Likert scale self-assessment survey. We also examined student artifacts and analyzed reflective essays. We conducted and continue to conduct interviews and focus groups with students. We've analyzed the qualitative data and linked the results back to the student learning outcomes established for our community engaged learning. For instance, for a student learning outcome related to students being able to identify personal and societal responsibilities in the promotion of social justice, we've noted from our analysis of student reflective essays that students noted several points of personal responsibility and action following their community engaged learning experience, including informed voting in elections, support for fair wages, consumer consciousness, and in general, greater acceptance of diversity in society. We are also in the process of a longitudinal study And at this point, we're analyzing data from interviews with alumni to determine the impact of such learning experiences beyond graduation. And I'll invite you here on our poster under assessment. You see a quote by James, a student at Xavier, and you can also click to hear his entire interview reflecting on his community engaged experience in a side-by-side course in a local prison setting. Some recommendations we have for you. Providing faculty development opportunities to equip faculty with knowledge and skills for more successful classroom discussions, reflections, and relationship building with communities. Focus on creating a community of learners so that students are not reticent to share their thoughts and experiences with one another. Nothing is worse than trying to facilitate a discussion and facing silence from your students. One recommendation by Anne Green is to plan at least one event or activity for the entire class to engage in together in the community. Teach racism as an interlocking system of oppressions, privileges. Focus on relationship building in the community, establishing sustainable partnerships with your community partner, and work as a team to create a learning experience for your students. Encourage students and faculty to lean into discomfort during the experience and create specific critical reflection tasks that focus specifically on race. And so, Sean, I think we've given a great overview. Do you have anything to add in the end regarding the recommendations?
No, thank you so much for taking time to listen to our presentation. And we always welcome your insights and comments. We'll have our email information available as part of the poster presentation, and we always welcome your input as well. And thank you to the HACU for this conference and this opportunity to share our insights and thoughts with you.